Welcome, everyone to Eye on Privacy, the July edition. It's a late edition. We're here at the very end of the month, but we're excited to be here with you. We've got a lot of new, interesting things to talk about. We've got a lot of our usual data metrics to provide for you. My name is Jared Coseglia. I am the CEO and founder of TRU Staffing Partners, and we specialize in data privacy, cybersecurity, e-discovery, and AI for legal staffing. And we're going to get into that today as well. I am joined today, as I am every month, with a new special guest host by Michelle Dennedy. Michelle is, one of maybe the Mount Rushmore of privacy leaders in the space, worthy of being remembered as such. Really one of the founding people that started this before it was an industry. Michelle is now the CEO and founder of PrivacyCode and has been an attorney, a CPO at major corporations in Fortune 100. She's also the author of Privacy Engineers Manifesto. And this book has been around for a bit and has a preface by someone who's an AI data scientist, which I think is relevant and a bit prophetic, if I do say myself. Michelle, welcome to I Am Privacy with TRU. We're so glad to have you.
Well, thank you. I'm glad I've been acknowledged as old as stone, finally. I've been waiting for this moment.
Worthy of being carved in stone is how you have to look at it, right?
Like
Right?
it.
Michelangelo's David is a young man.
Yes. I have on more clothes, though. We'll keep it that way for privacy.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, we've got lots to talk about today, so we're going to dive right in. Here are some of the things we talk about for those of you that are new to our program. Every single month, TRU is regularly and rigorously tracking all sorts of metrics in the industry, whether it's remote versus in-office, speed of hire, that's how quick it takes to fill a position, what the compensation metrics are at the point of hire, what the likelihood you're getting acceptance is based on when and how you make an offer, contract versus full-time, what's motivating privacy job seekers, and a whole lot more. So if you haven't downloaded our 2024 Data Privacy Jobs Report, this has all the metrics from 2023. And every month, we're sort of updating those metrics with what we're seeing in real time. So this program is all about what's happening in real time. Nothing feels more real time than the Bloomberg article that many of us read this morning by a wonderful reporter named Cassandra Coyer, who I'm a big fan of, and comes from the legal technology space and is now focused explicitly in privacy. I've given her a few quotes over the years for some of her work, and I find her work very provocative. The numbers we're putting up here, and we can throw them all up, MT, these actually come from our 2024 jobs report, which was data collected over the course of the calendar year of 2023. And it really was a breakdown into what's happening at the CPO level. And this article was also what's happening at the CPO level. Michelle, before I get into the metrics, for those of us that haven't read it, and maybe Sarah Brown, you could throw the link to the article up in the chat. And if people have questions, put your questions in the chat, the Q&A box for questions and chat for other stuff. But Q&A box will monitor for your questions and we'll get to them. Michelle, what was the article about? What was it sort of saying or hypothesizing, and what was your take on it?
Well, I think we're going to tease out the context behind it. So I think that's good. I think ignore the clickbait headline. We're not going anywhere. Privacy people are necessary to commerce, community, culture, the whole thing. But I think it was very interesting. I think it did talk about a trend that we have been seeing, which is title depression for the most senior leader, which is a terrible trend. We'll talk about that. It also felt a little bit personal. There was a little bit of an anonymous sort of, we're not seeing enough here of an exiting leader. But I also think there too was a very strong focus on one particular very, very unique company. So I think it's an interesting read. I was telling them in advance, I read it 3 times because I know the gentleman quoted all of them, and I sort of took it in defense of friend first, then I took it in defense of industry second, and then I kind of cold read it a 3rd time to say there is this big dispersion happening right now in the profession. And I actually think it's a very positive trend for all of us. We will get those top numbers back up again because it's just foolish not to. But for the spread that we're going to talk about, there's a lot to be done across early, mid, and later in career.
100%. I will say though, there's a lot of truth to this article, right? Which is why we flash these numbers up on the screen here, because what we saw in 2023 was essentially the fewest amount of chief privacy officer positions posted since we've been tracking that, and that was before GDPR. So there is definitely significantly less hiring at that level, but let's be honest, there's a lot less movement at that level as well.
That's right. That's right. And I think I've also seen witness, because we do, everyone's on a first name basis in privacy. That's how new the profession is. We're seeing older workers getting pushed out. We're seeing repurposing of role at a much more junior level. We're seeing get away with hiring. So we'll do the least effective thing. And this is not just, and a necessary reskilling that we will discuss in a little bit, but this is not unique to this particular C-level function. We're seeing a lot of the top level managers, particularly for more senior people, being pushed out of the organization because there's this belief that there's some sort of automagic that can happen without good, solid, metriced leadership. And that's, I think, where we need to focus.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I've seen this happen in other industries that we represent, right? I think privacy is in maybe its adolescence, if even that. Whereas other industries like cyber even and e-discovery, which I think is even a more consolidated, commoditized industry than either privacy or cybersecurity. We've seen this happen in those industries before. And I think it speaks to these metrics, right? On the far side, you've got CPOs spending 15 to 25% of their time on AI. This is all new stuff. So this is really the age-old story of the necessity for upskilling, right? I was at a Consero event and got asked the question in a room full of 100 CPOs, do CPOs have to get on this train and reinvent and learn all this new stuff, or can we just be CPOs and do what we've done and manage, compliance programs to some extent and some impact on the business, but do we have to evolve in this expansive way? I'm curious to hear your answer to that question, Michelle. Do they have to evolve, or is there a place in this ecosystem for everybody, for some of the people that just are very happy staying in their lane?
I think there is a place for folks who like to do rote and repetitive kind of constant work. That was not the case in the early days. It is now. If you love filling out ROPAs, if you love filling out PIA intake forms, and they are intake forms, they are not compliance, there's a place for you. However, you must evolve. If you're going to call yourself a chief, you're going to be in pain. That's the reality of that role. And I've had this conversation with mentees and other people in the industry before. You have to fight for budget, and there are new and different places to get it now. You have to expand your skill set. No more can you just call your outside counsel, pass a memo on, and wave your hand and say goodbye. No more can you consider yourself just a policy-driven person. You have to start to understand the architecture and the supply chain that you're governing. So it's a good news, bad news story. If you still want to be in the lead and you want those highly less than 5%, super valuable, very well-paid jobs that are very fast moving and they often turn over, you're going to have to step it up. And you know what? It'll be fun when you get there.
I think so too. I think, staying in your lane is steady and secure. But for those who have ambition for vertical and financial mobility, I don't think you're going to get it staying in your lane. It's going to be very difficult to get it by staying in your lane. That doesn't mean there won't be security in the space in terms of professional security and stability from a job perspective. But you've got to think about, are you looking for stability or are you looking for mobility?
Yeah.
And what we're clearly seeing is mobility is going to require reinvention from leaders and then eventually start trickling down throughout the ecosystem. I want to pick up on one thing you said, which I think is so important. And I think it speaks to this center statistic where in 2023, really coming out of the great resignation of 21 and 22, CPOs were spending time having to go recruit for jobs in their programs because they weren't given the budget to use third-party agencies. Trust me, we know that to be more than true, and still holds true in a lot of circumstances, and is a struggle to get the buy-in for headcount. And if you get headcount, you maybe not get buy-in for experts to fill these jobs quickly for you. What are the keys and where are the places where CPOs have to go looking for budget? How do they advocate for it? Where are they maybe not thinking to go looking for resources, whether they're human or financial? What's been your experience having success getting that budget, getting that buy-in?
Yeah, and it's a great question. It's probably a whole podcast question of like how to get budget. And it depends, which is I do have a legal background. It depends, but the ubiquitous answer is follow the business. Every single person in privacy, I don't care if you're in your first job or you're a very senior person, you should be reading the 10K or any other publicly filed report, whether or not it has a little section for you on privacy. Understand what is going on with the business. What are the sensitivities? How are they making money? I guarantee you that if you have employees or customers, privacy is highly relevant. Who is most empowered by whatever metric they're guiding at the tops of the C-suite? What is most impactful so that you can influence the board? Frightening stories don't matter to board members except for their personal, liability. What they care about is trend. So what's trending? What is going to happen that your work is going to impact now that's going to not just decrease risk of getting sued by some outside third party? What is going to dampen the likelihood that your own team's going to churn? Are they visible to other teams and helpful? Are you going into places like the CISO for security to say, oh, you love encryption? Let's talk about key management. Now we're going to talk about roles. Who owns roles? People. Privacy is relevant here. So how am I going to get in on this initiative and get some budget? Or salespeople, you're getting your CRM system. I guarantee you, if you're selling a data-bound product in any kind of way, you're seeing the privacy role as a little burr in your supply chain. How do we increase that and make that more efficient? How do we take out risk of non-regularities and start to measure that? When you come in as a hero to support what other people's KPIs are, you're going to be embraced the next time around for even budget that you haven't creatively thought to go after yourself.
It's incredibly wise. And what I heard you say that maybe helps turn it into a soundbite is you've got to follow the business, not just the regulations. I think a lot
Yes.
of job seekers are chasing the regulations. They're trying to stay abreast of everything on a global level, and that knowledge they feel it can be broadly applied to any organization to kind of break into the business. And this maybe is addressing Ruthie's question and comment in our chat section, which we appreciate that, Ruthie. This may be one way to look at it, right? It's not just a matter of getting skills and certs. It's a matter of being able to translate that into business impact, well above and beyond compliance requirements, well above and beyond checking the boxes necessary to not get fined, but really having a dialogue with stakeholders, even at the interview stage process, even at mid-level positions or early career positions, to show that you've done the research not only on your industry of choice, but on that specific organization. And yes, that means you're gonna have to do more nuanced research on a per interview basis about the companies you're interviewing for and how their businesses make money and function and how privacy might relate to that. Yeah, those are the people that people are investing in. And I think one of the challenges we hear from a lot of people, who are trying to break into the business is, what do I do to separate myself from all the other people who are getting their certifications and have a desire and come from a tertiary discipline? And I think Michelle has really identified the thing that on paper and in person, when we interview people, immediately separates, people that have made the investments in themselves to people that have translated that investment into how it's going to impact businesses, right?
Absolutely. And I think it goes to some of the questions in the Q&A section as well. As, how do I get a role as a DPO? How do I come in as a non-legal person? There are different opinions. And so some people will swear up and down that you need to be an attorney. I happen to be an attorney. I try very hard when I set up a program to not center it in the GC's office, because in many organizations, not all, it's budget limiting. You're viewed as a cost center or a service provider rather than core. And so in an operations team or an engineering team, even though I was not a native engineer, I was raised by one, my co-author on the Privacy Engineers Manifesto. But how do I get a job as a DPO? If you're in a role, or if you're working as a contractor, think horizon. What am I seeing as trend? What am I seeing as successful? What are the most curiosity for the most cautious? I'll call them leaders in bunny quotes, but Leaders don't really look left and right. We get the data and we move forward. But a lot of leaders will say, what's somebody else doing? Well, if you're a contractor, you get to actually know from the inside. Without sharing confidential information, you can say, oh, they started with mapping, or they started with a SurveyMonkey type PIA product and then lifted, or they started from strategy from the top down and started being very stiletto-like. And that's how you get that sort of native knowledge horizontally, where you're going into something more specific. I've seen people come at this from, I mean, remember the originals, like Sandy Hughes came from marketing, Barb Lawler, not an attorney. So many people came, I think Cullen wasn't either. I mean, he came in from marketing as well at Microsoft. So there are a ton of people that came in as consultants, as HR people. I think Harriet was originally an HR support lawyer before she got into the game, a lot of environmental protection. What are the commonalities? Horizontal functioning, system of systems, understanding what makes efficiently assets run, privacy and private data about humans. It's the thing that describes a great employee. It's the thing that describes a great customer. So as my dad used to say, the only companies that need to care about privacy are the ones that have employees or customers or want those things. So if you want to be in the privacy game, understand what makes the system run and bring to it some of the specialization. And to specifically answer the cert question, there's a lot of certifications right now. Use what's best for you. You're not going to get a magic pill certification that's going to transform you, but you might meet great classmates as you're taking that cert. Carnegie has a great one too. Amalia and Eric Liebeck are offering a cert for AI right now. There's a lot of different certifications. There's content, there's sort of credibility, and there's just having the context. So IAPP in particular, it's a great starter cert because you're just going to learn vocabulary. And hopefully, if you do take a live session or a semi-live session, it's been a year since I've seen what that looks like, you're going to meet colleagues that are going to give you kind of the insight. And of course, you're going to work with Jared and his gang too. They probably know a thing or two.
It's all who you know, Michelle. We know
All
this.
they do.
It's all who you know. Whether you're in Hollywood or in privacy, it doesn't really matter. It really matters a lot who you know and who's validating you and who you rubbed shoulders with or bumped elbows with.
Or rubbed the wrong way. They may not like your style.
Yeah,
Bit of a cannonball, you know?
You said earlier something that stuck with me, which is if you're a contractor, and I think for a lot of our listeners, that's the first hurdle, right? Whether you're a hiring manager or a job seeker, is just wrapping your mind around the notion of contracting is a huge part of this industry now, whether we like it or not, and is going to continue to be a modality that people are hiring from. So I want to flash forward to the next slide because we always promise everybody we'll give them the updates month by month. And we'll go through these pretty quick, but the job market for CPOs to move into other CPO positions has been quiet for 21 months. And, from what we're reading, that may persist for quite a bit longer as new roles start to emerge and define themselves. Contract hiring outweighs direct hiring because the speed of hire for FTEs is so slow. We're actually starting to see more jobs, at least advertised, that are full-time jobs than contractors. But some of these jobs stay open and advertised for quarters, much less months or weeks, whereas a contract job tends to get filled, if it's by TRU, in less than a week. But generally in a couple of weeks, from sourcing. So part of the reason why we're still seeing so many jobs filled is because of speed. The volume of entry-level career and transitioning candidates seeking employment and privacy is at an all-time high. We've never seen so many people try to break in or transition into privacy than ever before, which is interesting because it kind of speaks to, I don't know if you saw this article, but there was an article that was published in the Wall Street Journal this week also that specifically mentions, and Sarah, maybe you could throw that in the chat for everybody too, that jobs in cybersecurity, right? Let's call privacy a, part of that ecosystem. For the sake of a Wall Street Journal kind of kingdom family.
They do their best, Jared. They do
look at the world. That essentially said, jobs being posted for 275 2 years ago are being posted for 175 to 200 now. And that dissonance is also sort of incentivizing people to try to break into this industry. The problem is hiring managers still don't want no experience. They want experienced talent. They just want them for 30 to 40% less than what people are asking for in the marketplace right now. And that's creating a lot of stasis in the job market as well. 38% of our contractors who started assignments in 2023 were offered direct hire conversions. It's a 4% drop. It was at 42 last month. It dropped. Part of that is because we just added a lot more contractors, and so the clock is kind of ticking. But that's an astronomically high number. And we saw more contractors convert between the months of May and June than in any 30-day period for the last 24 months. So people are using that contract to hire as a way to hire people. Michelle, any comments or observations to any of this?
Yeah, I think one of the a couple of things, because I encourage it when people reach out and want to just kind of chat about strategies and things. I think there's a couple things. I think one is a posted salary on LinkedIn is not the salary that you're going to negotiate for. So don't shut yourself down. I've heard tons of people say, "Oh my God, I wouldn't get out of bed for 250,000." I would, and I've been in the business for 30 years. So the reality is, once you get your boots on the ground and they see what you have to offer, don't say no until it's time to say no. Always have them say yes to you, right? So that's thing number one, is don't block yourself out, for superficial things before you even open your eyes and see what's going on. Don't turn down a contract position. I know that healthcare is awful. I'm a small business owner now. It's awful. It's hugely expensive. It's terrible. I mean, while they're depressing our salaries, they're increasing our healthcare costs, particularly in the US. So short of moving to the UK or Canada or some other English speaking place, it is what it is. But do take that contract position. And it's because of the complexity. And this is part of why we will continue to be a growth profession. Even in the comments when that Bloomberg article was posted, we saw CISO saying, well, we take care of all of this in CISO land. Well, I speak CISO. They're talking about encryption. They're not talking about proportionality, minimization, understanding what the data flows are, supply chain, vendor management, all the things that we love and do. So if you're coming in as a contractor and suddenly you understand what's inside that very secret, hard to know black box, you are incredibly valuable. So thing number one, know that you're valuable. Thing number two, keep your eyes and ears out for any signals that they might be converting people, if that's what you want in your role, and start to just put your shoulders back a little bit, put your chin up and say, I am that valuable. And we do have to fight for and negotiate for salaries, which should not be going down. They should be going the other way. We are the thing standing in between irresponsible AI and quant.
Couldn't agree more. Let's take a look at a few of our data points. This one is contract versus direct hiring. As you can see here, this is based on offers accepted that we're tracking. We're still seeing about a 60-40 split, with contract exceeding full-time. Again, not advertised, but actually accepted. And the reality is people are just able to onboard contractors significantly faster. Big tech is a big piece of this. They're using contractors at a pretty rigorous tick right now, and avoiding adding full-time headcount, particularly now over the last 2 weeks as the NASDAQ has been spiraling. I think you're going to see that accelerate the modality of using contractors, particularly in technology sectors. I think this will flip by 2026. It should stabilize. I think next year we're going to see a spike in demand of people having to essentially pay more money, or give more remote work permissions, right? Those are the two things that kind of work in counterbalance. If you want people in an office, you're going to have to pay more money. If you want to hire caliber, you're going to have to pay more money. If you're willing to let people work remotely, they will sacrifice quite a bit for that permission, because those permissions are harder to get now than they were 18 months ago.
Yeah, and you didn't cover a really important thing from the last slide, which everyone is feeling, which is burnout. It's the number one reason people are dropping out or becoming contractors or setting up their own shops to try to fight the fatigue of constantly being. I love that the article's author from Bloomberg was Cassandra. Cassandra was the mythical person who said, I can see the doom. I can see it. Help me, help you. And
it might not all be doom. I mean, I just want to parallel it to what happened in e-discovery, because the same thing happened in e-discovery, like around the time that the first set of federal rules of civil procedure came out in 2006, and then sort of again triggered by Occupy Wall Street and the Great Recession of 2008. You had all these lit support managers, some of whom were lawyers, some of whom were not. And to answer that question, we see about a 50-50 split in leadership out in the marketplace right now, both in terms of gender, in terms of lawyer, non-lawyer. This community's got a lot of equality in it.
Absolutely. And we're actually going down in equality, because when we first started out, we were the ladies, we were the brown people, we were the queer people. Why? Because we've all experienced the direct harm that abuse of private information has. That's the truth. It wasn't anything other than that. These were jobs nobody else wanted. We've created them and pushed them into the executive suite because we would not be ignored.
And that mission is what drives a lot of people to try to transition into this business. Sometimes it's good to lead with mission. Sometimes you need to lead with business impact, though. And I think right now,
Have both.
corporations need you to have it, at least the business impact, probably both, right? Let's take a look at remote versus in office, which I think is what's next. The speed of hire. So you could see speed of hire is accelerating in some areas and decelerating in others. It's way accelerating at the executive level, which we sort of articulated. It's accelerating at the contract level, accelerating a little bit at what we're seeing in the privacy analyst arena. It's actually kind of slowed down a little bit there too. I'm sorry, in the program manager director, we're seeing a lot more volume at that level. That's the kind of dark blue line second to the top. And the reason is because the demand is increasing in that sector over the last 30 days. We've seen a lot more people need that. We're seeing a lot of people take maternity leave. We're seeing a lot of people take FMLA. We're seeing a lot of people take time off and a lot of contract opportunities for people to come in and have immediate impact in that privacy program manager area, convert to full-time employees potentially. So this is what we're seeing in terms of speed. The sad part, it is slowing down a little bit. That's problematic. That also might just be summer. That does sort of happen. Usually it doesn't happen until August, but we are seeing a little bit of a malaise in June headed into July. Here's the offer acceptance likelihood based on when you receive it. So we've actually seen if you're faster to get someone an offer, meaning either the first offer they receive, what's the likelihood they're going to take it? That's at 70% now. That actually went up. And I can tell you in cybersecurity and e-discovery, that number went down and is in the 50s now. Again, people aren't waiting around to see if somebody finally gives them an offer they're looking for. They're taking a bird in the hand more likely than waiting for two in the bush, which we kind of thought was going the other direction, but we're seeing it sort of eke back, which is interesting. Final stat, this is the one I really wanted to get to, remote versus hybrid. And you could see here, most of the jobs now are completely hybrid, but you'll also see here that in 2023, we had less than half of those jobs were fully remote. And the only reason why it's gone up in 2024 is because so many jobs being filled are contract jobs, and contract jobs are generally fully remote. Michelle, we've got 3 minutes left. I want to give you some final thoughts on all this data. We do have a few more stats. I think nothing magnanimous. Maybe MT can click through. Yes, we know the motivations are tough right now, and burnout is still at the top. Unemployment is back on the list. Final thoughts for our listeners and our viewers, things that we would want them to consider for the future, or and any last thoughts, Michelle?
Well, I think, you can't be in privacy and data and AI and new tech without being an optimist. So I am an optimist. So if you're a cynic, then that's a good balance for us. But I will say I am incredibly optimistic. I am one of the older people. I'm one of these people seeking one of those C-suite jobs if I get on the market again. So for me, it's as frightening as it is for you, because it takes a lot longer for me to find a role. However, all that said, look at the spread and diversity of types of roles. So if you are starting to experience burnout, if you are getting bored, or if you love doing the PIAs, but you just haven't had that chance, start volunteering for stuff. If you can't get anywhere else and you can't even get a contractor job, start talking to your local not-for-profits. They don't have privacy and security expertise, and they are dealing with incredibly sensitive information. So there's all sorts of ways to be creative to get the skills you want. Meet the people you want. The best part about the privacy profession is we have been so open door for so long. You can reach out to just about anyone in privacy, and they will open their door to you and help you figure out, what do you really want? Because this is yours to want. You don't have to wait. You have to want, and then go get it.
I love it. It makes me think of a couple of truisms, as we say here at TRU.
Of course.
One of them is, we'll never pressure you to take a job, but it's our job to pressure you to take an interview, which sort of harkens back to what you said before, keeping a really open mind in this marketplace. Unemployment is past 4% now. That's the highest we've seen it in quite some time. It's going to get competitive, stay competitive through now to the end of the year. I also think you're right. We chose privacy. We went into privacy as a business because of the culture of the community. Don't be shy. Go make friends. Ask people to introduce you to other people. They'll be pretty generous with that interconnectivity. And to that point, here's a number of resources you can use from us. We've got more webinars coming up. We're doing a resume clinic specifically for privacy people in 2 weeks with the amazing SVP here at TRU, Jess Barr. For those of you who don't know her, she's brilliant, and she will join me as we break down the top 10 things every privacy resume needs to address. That will probably be one of the most valuable 30 minutes of content for those of you that are thinking about entering the job market or are currently looking for jobs. We're partnering with Transcend on specifically targeting what's happening as it relates to AI in the privacy job market, both from a tech and a job market perspective. Michelle, thank you for joining us. You've been amazing. I appreciate all your insights. And thank you to all of our listeners who are here with us today. Join us again in August for our monthly Eye on Privacy, and have a great summer. Talk soon.
Thanks everyone.